We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Good morning to you wherever you're watching from. We're on Facebook at News Channel 5, and we also are on the Plus. And if you want to call in and join in the conversation, give us a holler. We've got some phone lines open if you want to give us a call. But good morning to all of you joining us. And Professor John Weil with us from MTSU. So what about these debates? It's interesting. Oftentimes you sometimes get a sense, depending on the office, that the incumbent is not always thrilled with doing a bunch of debates. But I clearly think President Trump is looking forward to having some debates. I think Joe Biden, on the other hand, it probably could go either way on a debate. I'm sure he's ready to do it. But now it seems like there's only one on the table at this point, and the pandemic may have something to do with it. But what do you think? And I think the one on the table is still set, I don't know for when, at Belmont.
I believe that's right. Actually, debates, generally, if you're ahead, you don't have nearly as much incentive to debate as if you're behind.
Sure.
And right now, at least, the polls, particularly in the popular vote, would tend to indicate it's a little bit closer when it comes to the Electoral College. But in the polls, Biden is ahead. And so he has less incentive, arguably, to debate than Trump does. Frankly, I'm almost more interested and hopeful that there'll be a vice presidential debate than a presidential debate. If there's anything that Kamala Harris showed during the primary campaigns, is that she has a pretty good stage presence, and I think that there's still one vice presidential debate scheduled as well. But hats off to Belmont, that they have been very successful, and they've done a good job with the debates that they've had. And if things go according to plan, it does look like they're going to have maybe the only one this year at the presidential.
Yeah, very interesting. But I would think, too, with this president, and I don't know, he of all people would probably say, don't even bother looking at the polls. I'm done with the polls myself, and I know what you're saying. But, I mean, based on his experience with the debates when he was running, I think he probably came out of that with a good taste in his mouth and would pick up where he left off. As far as the vice presidential debates, would you agree that vice president's important once they get into place, though in a lot of ways they're the ones that go to things the president doesn't want to go do, but that the vice presidents, be it Harris or be it Pence, whoever it is, more important perhaps than ever before, in that they truly are going to be closer to the presidency than ever before. And all I'm saying that is whoever wins this next presidential election, will they not be the oldest president in U.S. history? And if that's the case, I sure hope they both stay healthy and nothing happens. But at that age, you never know that either one of these vice president candidates could end up becoming the president just like that if something horrible happened.
No, and I think there were a lot of reasons that Harris was selected, but certainly by comparison, for example, to Elizabeth Warren, who seems very healthful and enthusiastic. But it really is somewhat comforting in both positions, Pence and Harris, that both of them are relatively young and I think both would be capable of assuming the presidency if the moment called for it.
If there is a debate, say at Belmont, how do you imagine it would be done? Would you think that they'll have it at Belmont? The president and Biden would be here, and they would be socially separated on a podium, and there would maybe be just very, very sparse coverage in there, maybe some media, if that, and not a live crowd? Or how would they do that, would you imagine?
I would guess that would be how you would do it. Maybe, one every 6 feet in the audience, and you could possibly have a larger auditorium where people, could respond and be better spaced out. All I know is, Belmont has done a good job with the last ones they've had, and I feel fairly confident they'll be able to pull it off again.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about last night, among other things that we noticed. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was given, I think, 1 minute to talk. And in that minute, she never mentioned Joe Biden. She did mention Bernie Sanders, who was the candidate she had supported, and that she is going to support Biden, but that she, it seemed like, wanted to send a message: please do not forget some of the agenda that Bernie and his supporters care about.
Right. Her purpose, as I understand it, was actually that of nominating, putting forward the nomination of Sanders. So, I think the Democrats are trying to do a fairly broad tent. Yes, they have brought in, Bernie got a chance to speak, and she got a chance to speak, and others. But they've also brought in a fair number of what I would say are moderate Republicans. Last night it was Colin Powell.
Right.
The night before that it was John Kasich. John McCain, I'm not sure, it's a little hard to give endorsements from the dead, but you came about as close probably as you're going to get last night with the, little segment on him.
By his wife, right? His widow.
That's right. So, my own view is that as Democrats go, Biden is relatively moderate. I think there's been a tendency as Trump, and I'm not sure I'd even say it's to the right, but as Trump has become, more bellicose about his own policies, I think there's been a tendency on the other side. This often happens in elections. That Republicans push farther to the right than the general population, and Democrats push farther to the left. It's likely that we will still have, if we were to have, we could very well end up after the presidential election still with a divided government where at least one house of Congress is of the other party. And frankly, that may be where the American people are right now, that, lurching too far in either direction is really not what they want to be. And the fact that, Biden was able to emerge from such a large field of candidates and he's basically in the middle, I think is a relatively good sign.
Tonight, the convention continues, and you would think that tonight's big moment is going to be hearing from Kamala Harris, who's going to speak. But it seems like it's almost assured she will be overshadowed by another speaker tonight, who will be Barack Obama himself. And we've already heard from his wife, of course, and now he will be speaking of his former vice president.
Yes, I was surprised last night. Now, we bring our own perspectives to this, and other people may have a different idea, but they really kept Bill Clinton on a very tight leash in terms of the amount of time that they gave him. And frankly, the fact that we had sort of recordings from, I guess they were recordings that you were at least not seeing the videos with the Carters. I didn't think either of those presentations came across as probably as important as I thought they might have been.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I don't know, as far as the Carters, and it's amazing that Jimmy Carter is still rolling along as he is with some of the health problems that he's had and that he continues. They wanted to give time to the two of them. It seemed like that we heard, as you know, there's kind of a rule of thumb, is there not, in general, among all former presidents, to not openly be critical of a sitting president. And I understand that. Now, when campaign comes about, maybe all bets are off to the degree that you're going to support a challenger, perhaps. But it did seem like former President Clinton was more, attacking a bit of President Trump.
Well, I thought one of the more interesting speeches at the convention, and I'm not sure that I interpreted it correctly, but the Sanders speech, which you would have expected to be, sort of raw meat, we got to have health care, we got to have this, we got to have that, became, I thought, much more, this is a crisis inflection point. Democracy itself is at stake, civility itself is at stake, even more than, the kind of policy issues that generally you expect him to advocate.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think most people, on whichever side you are, be you Republican or Democrat, might well say that your vote this November is going to be the most important vote in American history. You just never know, depending on how you feel about things. Listen, we'll take a break. I certainly hope that means that we're going to have an awful lot of turnout of everyone. When we come back, more of our conversation. We'll take a few more calls, and if anyone has comments or questions on Facebook, join us there. We'll be right back after this.